Hello, World Civilization 107 class. Welcome to week 2. So I want to congratulate any of you who are actually watching this video. You're doing the right thing. You're watching the announcements. Um, and if you are someone who was, one of the students that were a little bit behind and are now just starting to kind of catch up, I want to remind everyone, first of all, if you're watching this, if you attained a 0 on any assignment, I gave you feedback on why you have a 0. And importantly, I tell you what you need to do to fix it, and I'll let you fix it. So for the first few weeks in particular, if I give you a 0, I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to give you a way to figure out how to fix that. Remember, if you're looking on your phone and you just saw your grade and it says 0, and you're just looking on your phone, it won't see my feedback, okay? Which is why I tell you not to rely on the phone for this class, because you're going to need to know why, and I'll explain it. Most of you are getting this down quite well, but the issue is always going to be citations the way that I showed them in the examples, to put them within the essay. Most of you are getting that down wonderfully. Some of you are having a little hard time with it. Please feel free to contact me to get clarity if the explanations that I've given so far and looking at the examples just not doing it for you, okay? So that's going to be the important part of figuring out things for this semester. Also, late work, important. I let a lot of you basically turn in late work without any explanation. But the official policy I have in my syllabus is that if the work is 8 hours after the due date, so like midnight on Sunday is when it's due. So let's say that you had a problem with your computer, whatever, you forgot, you were too tired, you got home from work late, you get up at like 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, and you send me your work. You don't have to explain anything. You get full credit. But a day goes by, or the next evening. If you want to turn in the late work, you're going to have to write me and ask. And I need to give you permission. And then you can turn in the late work. If you don't do that, moving forward, so like right now, don't stress if you've already turned in some late work and you're like, oh no. But right now, you watch this. Moving forward, if you turn in late work without asking for permission from me, it's an automatic, it'll stay a 0 and we'll not have a discussion about it. You cannot make up that work. In other words, I automatically reject it and this case is closed. Mainly because I had a lot of students taking advantage of this class in that way, where maybe the last 2 weeks before class is over, someone just starts dumping all this work on me and thinks that I'm supposed to just automatically take it. No. Also, the part of this is to keep you honest and slow you down from making a habit of doing late work. Now, keep in mind, you don't need to overshare. And I truly am not judging you for having late work. Look, you could be sad because you had a breakup. I get it. You could be sad because you made a choice, like it was a wedding, you had a good night, you drank more than you usually do, or that took a whole nother set of events. You got the stomach flu. Okay, look, you don't need to explain all that. This is all you need to do. You need to say, Mr. Pollock, I'm sorry. Some things happened this weekend that prevented me from getting my work done. Is it okay that I turned it in this evening? That'll be sufficient. Now, if this is a habit, then we may have to have a conversation more like, hey, what is going on in your life that's making your work habitually late? And again, it won't be to judge you, but for us to kind of like figure out like what's going on here, okay? And so just remember, communication with me was always golden. It's always going to go well for you to just reach out and communicate. I promise you, I'm not judgmental. I'm not, going to come at you in any kind of like, way grilling you. Now, if I ask you questions on things, it's mainly to just to know where you're at with things, not to put you on the spot, because it's communication is about also like knowing what everybody else knows. I don't know what you know or what's comes natural to you or or what your background is on anything. So, okay, having said that, and moving on, I just kind of briefly want to just go over the information that we covered and talk about where we're going with the information. So, we learned about Tokugawa, Japan, and uh, we saw the isolation of the island. Interestingly enough, you see modern history kind of makes sense of certain things that you learn about Japan. Okay, um, we learned about the Safavid Empire and the Ottoman Empire. Now, here's very important that we're going to go into later on. Safavid Empire is from Persia, and Persia is the same as Iran or Iran. Okay, as it's many of you hear it called. So that is helping us get a little bit of a background on a country that is majorly in the news right now. The United States is locked in to a war that we can't seem to get out of. And there's this problem with the Strait. The United States just killed their supreme leader and family members, the wife, even I think a granddaughter. And there's a huge funeral going on in Iran for the death of the leader and the family. And the U.S. is locked into this thing. Okay, so we're going to get up to speed on that later on. But again, I want to remind you how this history helps give us a little piece of the puzzle going into what has been going on in this country. What's the background of it? And then the Ottoman Empire, hugely important. The center of the Ottoman Empire is a country now is Turkey, the Turks, okay? And it was multicultural, as you learned. And they ruled most of the Middle East. Now, there's a historian, and I talk about this later, but I'll repeat some things because they're worth repeating. One historian talked about the problems of the Middle East being the post-Ottoman syndrome. In other words, these are problems that have occurred since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And what we're going to learn about later is that the French and the British in particular shaped the post-Ottoman world in their image. When the Ottoman Empire existed, there was a Palestine in there. It was not an independent country. It was a part of the Ottoman Empire. It was mainly with Arab Muslims, then mainly Arab Christians, then Druze, then that's Druz, and then there's also Samaritans and a very small population of Jews. On average, probably less than 10% for much of the history there. Now, within the Ottoman Empire, Jewish populations were quite large in Baghdad, what is now Iraq, parts of Syria, parts of what is now Turkey, really significant Jewish communities in the Middle East there. There wasn't a Syria, Lebanon country, two different countries. It wasn't Jordan. Again, Israel was created in 1948. Sir Percy Cox, basically, the British created like Kuwait with a pen in 1923 and then propped up a family and gave them a country. So the Middle East, when you look at it, for many Americans, it's this primordial past, this problem, all of this conflict. And you're like, no, well, it's rooted a lot of the way that things have taken shape more since the 20th century, really. Okay. So that's something I want you to keep in mind as we move forward. And also, you'll notice in the news sometimes that when Turkey starts to reassert itself in the Middle East, people then start saying, is Turkey trying to recreate the Ottoman Empire and become the leader of the Middle East again, or blah, blah, blah. So you'll hear that kind of stuff. So I just want to kind of try to help make all of the history that we're learning make sense to you, become relevant to your understanding. Also, we learned about Islam in India. Pakistan is also a relatively new creation that came out of India, which is with a Muslim majority. Okay, so Urdu, for example, is basically Hindi with a lot of Persian in it, written in Arabic scripts, and maybe I'm leaving out maybe some. Yeah, I think that's mainly right. So, okay, so we're just trying to make sense of get the background of all these things that we're going into. All right, so we're going to put that aside for now, and now we're going into the topics that would have been perfect for our 4th of July, which is 3 revolutions I have us covered. We talk about U.S. Revolution, French Revolution, and Haitian Revolution. Now, the French Revolution is massively important, and so is the Haitian one. The U.S. one is too. But the fact that we don't have on our minds all the time the thoughts about the importance of these other two is very telling. So look, when I was studying Middle Eastern history and North African history and parts of the Cold War like Vietnam and stuff, one thing I noticed is that places that the French colonized, the paradox of French colonization is the French would come into like Algeria, Vietnam, you know, Lebanon, and they would say, oh, okay, we're going to colonize you. We're going to make you educated. And we're also going to teach you our awesome language and our awesome history while we're dominating you. Okay. And a lot of young intellectual nationalists that were often leftist, because remember, the liberal capitalist democratic world was the one that was oppressing them. So you couldn't go there for inspiration, right? You had to go to communists or something because you were being colonized by the liberal capitalist democratic West. But in that framework, from the French perspective, you're learning about the French Revolution and what did the French like to celebrate? Wow, we're very proud that we chopped the heads off of our oppressors, of our unworthy aristocrats and monarchy, and gave ourselves our own republic. And you'd get Vietnamese intellectuals and you'd get Algerian intellectuals that were getting a good French education by the foreigners. They're like, note to self, French Revolution. Let's just switch it up to the Algerian one, or the Vietnamese one. Kick out the French, which the Vietnamese did before the United States tried to then take over Vietnam, because Vietnam was not allowed to have an ideology that we didn't accept, right? Okay. So now let's look at Haiti. Haiti had the world's first successful slave revolution. How often have we talked about Haiti, a neighbor very close to Cuba, close to Florida, and talk about the significance of creating the first republic of enslaved people that actually overthrew their masters and took power? I would argue that the United States has always punished Haiti for this and not liked Haiti for this, and the same as France, resentful. Partly why? Look, we celebrated 4th of July because we're happy that we're not going to be oppressed by the British. But our culture had enslaved people of African descent. Thomas Jefferson looked at the Haitian Revolution in horror, right? Slave revolt winning, overturning their masters. Ugh. Okay, so but so there's that, and so I just I want you to take note of this history and think about it, and again the way that we perceive Haitians now. And if you look as we go into modern history, how many times the United States has invaded Haiti, and basically, like, I don't know, it's a rabbit hole that I'll just leave for now, that I think you should go down if you want to take interest, especially considering such negative views about Haitians here. And I think that there's a lot of self-reflection in our culture on that. Now, okay, so having said that, there's a lot to take in. It's important information, and I think we can all see how this applies to how we reflect and look at things in the modern world, right? Okay, so I hope you enjoy actually getting exposed to all of this, and also looking at Samuel Johnson's kind of contrarian view about our ideas of liberation and revolution, and just some of the texts that you look at and so on. And so anyhow, while you're going in this information, I also want to encourage you that if you care about the information enough that you have more questions or even debates with me, I actually think that's awesome, because you are caring enough about the information and want to push back on something or to go deeper. That means you're really engaged with the material, and that's what I like to see happen in this class. So All right. Having said that, I'll be done with this announcement and we'll be in touch. I hope you're having a good week.